The defensive end position, how would you characterize where it's at and the progress you made?
First word that came to my head was deep, diverse. I mean, I think we've got a good mixture of younger guys that are extraordinarily talented. I mean, we just hit absolute grand slam with the class of defensive ends a couple of years ago with Chidi Obiazer, Jordan Allen, and Ryan Davis. I mean, all three of those guys I think are going to be stars in this program. I'm not bashful about saying that. And then when you combine those guys with the Cody Stufflebeans, the Brendan Motts, the guys that have some experience at that position, I'm really excited about where that's at. And we're trying to find ways to maybe get more of those guys involved in what we're doing because that room is going to be one of our more talented rooms on defense for sure.
How are you navigating the linebacker spot? Because you have multiple guys recovering, and then you probably have guys that you're giving rest to this spring as well that have taken a lot of snaps. So how's that look?
Yeah, spring is about evaluation and it's about experimentation. And so we're trying to find those guys, and we are trying to push some guys up with the ones. We're trying to get Austin Romaine to realize that he's not a young guy anymore, that he's an old guy, and I think he's doing a great job with that. We are trying to stress Austin more by having him learn more than one position. At the same time, there are guys like Cam Salas, Rex Van Wy, guys like that are potentially going to find themselves in the mix to a much greater degree. That we're trying to see if those guys is it worth taking somebody else off the field to put them on, and so it's a huge evaluation time for those guys. So it hasn't slowed us down in what we're trying to do. I think all those guys understand what they're doing. Coach Stanner does a nice job with that in that room. It's just can we get those guys to play at varsity speed? And that's where we've been making a ton of hay, I think, this week in particular.
With Uso Seumalo limited during spring, is that advantageous for you at nose tackle? How does that position kind of look? Are you guys a little light in numbers there?
Yeah, we are a little light in numbers there. I don't think it's advantageous for us because I think he needs the reps. It's crazy to think that Uso was a dang, not that long ago, he was an offensive skill guy, and he's still green in his position, and he knows that, and he could use all the time in the helmet that he could get, but it's the hand that we're dealt, and so in the meantime, the benefits of that is we're getting a great opportunity to evaluate Asher Tomajeski. We're getting a great time to evaluate Titus Tuiasosopo, George Tralia. I feel pretty comfortable with Damian Elalio in there at nose. We've moved Javon Banks in and out of there. He's played some end and played some nose for us. So we can make it work numbers-wise, but, man, there's just no substitution for reps. And so some guys, Austin Moores, guys like that come to my mind that played so much football that you can probably get away with lightening their load a little bit. I don't know if Uso's quite to that degree yet. He's just still a heck of a football player, but I think there's still some things technically that can make him better that he's missing out on right now. That, from what I understand, we're going to be able to get him back in a limited role here toward the end of spring, even if it's just individual and stuff. I think that time with Coach Tuiasosopo is going to be huge for him.
It would seem that you're invariably going to need some young guys to step into the fore at safety. Who would that be? We saw Wesley Fair a little bit yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
Mikey Bergeron. Who are some of those names?
Yeah. Jack Fabris has been unbelievable. I think he's had a really good spring. Wesley Fair has had a really good spring. Both of those guys way above and beyond what we thought they were going to be relative to where they left off in the fall. We bolstered that position quite a bit, I think, with the addition of Jordan Riley. He's come in and just seamlessly fit into what we do. He's going to be a major part of who we will be next fall. Marquise Siegel has been as good as anybody in the country. I really believe that. We're down VJ Payne and Colby McAllister. I think those guys will play big parts for us in the spring too. So when you tally up all those guys, and I know, as you mentioned, Mikey Bergeron. I mean, there are others. Kendre Steiger's had a great spring. Daniel Cobbs has been in and out with some nagging little injuries. But we have as much like the defensive end room, I think that's going to be a fairly deep room for us that we got to find ways to utilize those guys to the best skill sets.
Joe, with the talent you do have up front, could you see yourself experimenting or going back and forth between 4- and 3-man fronts next season?
Yeah, that's hard to do. I don't know if I ever told you guys the story of the Stanford game. You know, it was a 4-down background, and you know, long story, but why we decided to do what we're doing with the 3-down front. But then, you know, that first game that we were going to play was Stanford. You know, and back then Stanford was 32 personnel Stanford, right, and going to ram it down your throats. And so conventional wisdom would tell you that's the worst time to go to a 3-down and see if it works or not. And so we kind of had in the back of our head, this stuff doesn't work, man. We're scrapping it and getting back to that 4-down stuff is lickety split. And, you know, played our butts off that day, and the rest was history. But for a long period of time there, we were practicing 3-down and 4-down football. And the principles of it and the spacing of it are just two different worlds. It's really hard to go back and forth. So I guess in my mind, it's not so much, you know, are we going to play 4-down stuff as much as it is how can we utilize maybe another defensive end type body into what we're already doing, and how can we in that way get our best 11 people on the field consistently. So I don't know if it'll change our nuts and bolts structure all that much, but just how can we find more creative ways to do different things with our best people. I don't know if that answers your question that clearly, but that's kind of where my head's at with it.
No, you did a good job. I also want to ask with Keenan, has he mastered his position well enough yet that he's a guy you can just, you know, rely on, be a steady Eddie kind of the guy you referred to from time to time?
Yeah, so much more confident than what he was. Even I think where he started to gain confidence, and I don't know if it was perceptible or not, but right around the Houston game last year, right around that time was where he realized I can challenge anybody. I can play with these guys. I can run with these guys. I can out-technique these guys. I understand what I'm doing well enough where I can know where I can take risks and where I need to avoid risks. And he didn't have that the first half of last season. And I think toward the end of last season, you didn't hear his name very much because he was doing his job. And I think he is he's as valuable of a returner as we've had. You know, the fact that he's going to come back and play his final year here is a huge, huge deal for this program. And so, yeah, I think he's exponentially grown. Just the amount of young guys we were playing last year in their first year that were kind of getting by, I don't want to say on false confidence because that's not true, but they just weren't still quite sure. They were just playing. And I think some of those guys, the Coleman McAllisters, guys like that just come to my mind that were young players last year that are so much better, such a different place right now mentally. Keenan being one of those, even though he's an older player, I think he's just in a different spot mentally right now, confidence-wise, than what he was even in November last year.
Go through some of the depth though that's developed at corner.
Yeah, so I'm very pleased with Jacob Parrish and Keenan Garber have been exceptional. They've been difference makers. As good of a duo as there will be in this league. And I think we feel so much better about what's behind them right now. Justice James has been great. Same kind of deal. Justice early to middle part of last year, he was just getting by on his instincts and his ability. I think right now he's just anticipating, seeing things, recognizing formations, just, totally different headspace. Kenigel Thomas, I'm very excited about. As a freshman last year, we moved him in and out of some special teams roles, never got significant time on defense. Extremely athletic, extremely competitive, physical, can run. I mean, he's going to be another one that will be a big player here in the future. Donovan McIntosh is improving. Tyler Nalone was someone we were excited to see. He's had some injury problems this spring, but he'll be a part of that mix. Darrell Jones has been back healthy. He hadn't been healthy for 2 years, so seeing him is impressive. So there's some competition in the room that we really haven't had.
Here's a modern-day college football question. You just listed off a bunch of depth on the defensive side. Transfer portal opens April 15th. How worried are you some of those depth pieces aren't starters might hit the portal?
Yeah, great question. I think that I feel very confident here. I feel very confident here because of the stability of the locker room, because of the stability of the program, because of the interconnectedness of the people within the program, from the head coach to the strength coach to the position coaches, to the players in themselves in the locker room. I would be surprised if we lost any of those depth pieces. I shouldn't say that with a grain of salt because nothing surprises me anymore. But I really would. And I think that you have to be mindful, too, that different people are in different places in their career. Kanigel Thomas should not be upset if he's in a reserve role because he's just in his second year. He's developing. This is a developmental program. I don't think we guised that in any way when we were recruiting these guys. I think we were upfront with them about that. We don't recruit people on the promise that they're going to come in and play right now. We recruit people on the promise that they're going to have to earn their way. And if you do earn your way, we don't care if you're a freshman or senior. You're going to play. And I think that because of the honest feedback that we constantly provide them, which is a hugely valuable piece, I think people really understand where they are in the program. So you're not catching them off guard when they're a 2 or when they're playing limited reps in a game, because they understand that's where they are in the program. And it doesn't mean they're any less valuable to the program. It just means that that's where they're at currently. A guy like Kanigel Thomas is a great example. I think he's going to be a multi-year starter here. I wouldn't be surprised if he's an all-conference guy by the time he's done. Right now, is he better than Jacob Parrish? Probably not, And so I think he understands that. I think we've been clear about that, and we're going to get him ready every week like he's going to play 80 plays. And he may play 80 and he may play 18. That's kind of how the games go. But, yeah, I'd be surprised. I think we got a pretty stable situation down there.
Let's flip the portal the other way. I assume because you lost literally a big piece of your recruiting class that was going to be an interior defensive lineman, at least part of the time, that the portal might be an area that you're going to explore for that here once it opens.
Yeah, we're looking at a few different options right now. I think we could win football games with what we have right now. If history has taught us anything, it's that Murphy's Law is always knocking on the door. And so, we thought linebacker was our deepest position last year. We played the last 4 games of the season with 3 linebackers. And so, yeah, we're going to be in the portal with kind of one eye open all the time, but we're not going to reach. I don't think we need to reach. We don't need to, we don't need to replace at the behest of our development. We still want to develop guys, and we want guys. We don't ever want to become a transfer portal lean-on football team. We're going to do it to supplement what we have. We're going to do it to supplement some of the depth problems that we may have, and we'll probably be out there looking for exactly that.
What's the competition been like at the jack safety position, replacing Kobe?
Yeah, so we played the bowl game with Colby McAllister, who's been out all spring, and so he's a guy that could factor into this. Jack Fabris and Jordan Riley and Jet Deneen have been the 3 guys that have been repping that spot. Jet Deneen has been exponentially better as a guy that I wouldn't have mentioned in that conversation maybe in January, and he's doing a tremendous job. But I think those other 2 guys are playing at an extremely high level right now. And, Jordan is a guy that's played a lot of football in college. I think he really understands the pace of the game, the maturity of how he takes care of his body, how he goes about his business. And Jack Fabris is just a machine in everything he does. Just, by the book, rigid, going to be playing 100%, coach's son that just, grew up that way. And so I think that's a tremendous 1-2 punch that we've got right now. How that'll ultimately sort out in the fall, I think, will be something that'll still play out through the summer into August.
Looking at the other side of the football, when we scrimmage and practice against the offense, it's young but has potential to have a lot of depth. Anybody that stood out from the young guys that have been a problem for your defense?
Yeah, I don't want to use the word problem, but one guy that's impressed me a lot is Jace Brown. I think Jace has made leaps and bounds progress from where he was at the end of last year. And I think everybody kind of knew what Avery was going to be. I think those young tight ends are developing quite a bit. But I see a lot of improvement. The two guys that I probably see the most improvement out of, and this is just me, the offensive guys might disagree, but Jace Brown and Keegan Johnson, I think, are guys that are standing out to me on a daily basis.
VJ Payne's going into his third season. What are the things that you're looking for him to do to kind of take that next step into being one of the big leaders for you guys?
Yeah, VJ is a great vocal guy. He's one of the guys that has a good voice and is a great communicator out there for us. He makes plays, but he doesn't always do it in the most efficient manner. I think sometimes his body control is something that we talk considerably about. He's a longer guy. Sometimes he kind of looks like a baby giraffe on the ice, just kind of all over the place. And but then other times he's playing fast and he's real smooth and he's real comfortable. And I know he's got that in him. I know he's got that. He's a tremendous athlete. He's one of the fastest guys on our team, very explosive. And so just being able to keep his body under control all the time has been the emphasis for him. It's not knowing what he's doing. He's extremely intelligent. It's more just, how can I do that more efficiently? How can I save that 1.5 feet of space that sometimes we wasted a season ago?
Damian's now kind of the old man in that room. What?
That's crazy.
What's kind of the steps that you've seen him take from last season to this spring?
He's grown so much that I think even a year ago he was still getting used to carrying some of that weight. He's not a big framed guy the way that Uso is and some of those guys at that position can be. So for him to go from, mid 280s to 305 was a deal for him a little bit. And so I don't know, in some way I suppose it hampered his movements. And he just looks so much more athletic, I think, right now. I see him getting off the ball. I see him coming out of his hips. He's another one that's extremely intelligent, just really understands what we're doing and how we're doing it. And so that's not been the issue with him. It's just how can we make him, just like VJ, a more efficient football player. Technique things.
Hey, Joe. Basic question, just broad-based. What do you like best about the defense right now?
I think guys are buying into what we're selling, and I guess the best way I can say this is a year ago at this time, we leaned really heavily on Daniel Green. He was the alpha male. He was the leader. And week 3 shows up, and we don't have Daniel Green anymore. And to watch Austin Moore take that onus of leadership on almost single-handedly last year, and I'm not saying other guys didn't contribute, but he really took the mantle when that happened and tried to lead. And there were a lot of guys that really weren't sure how to respond to that. I think the leadership is so much more spread out right now. I see it in every position group. You mentioned Damien Elalio, tremendous leader. Brendan Mott, tremendous leader. Jacob Parrish, tremendous leader. Marquise Siegel, tremendous leader. Guys that can pile on to the messaging that is coming down from Coach Kleiman to myself to Austin Moore to, across the defense. And that's probably the biggest difference is the maturity level, not of the top guys, but the maturity level of that next tier of guys that are going to be major, major contributors for us. And so how that messaging of effort and getting after the football and finishing plays and communication, how that's getting through to guys right now is probably what I'm most excited about. It's always being preached. It's always being talked about. It's on the leaders to make sure that those never become back burner issues. That those are always, man, if we didn't communicate well enough, there's a standard that we set, and we're holding each other to that standard. A year ago, I don't know if we did that consistently enough to be a championship defense. So I'm excited about that right now.
How many practices have you had so far, and from beginning to where you are now, where has the most improvement come from?
The defensive end room, I would say. And the only reason I say that is just because there are some extraordinarily talented kids. We moved Toby Asansonmi down there. That's another guy that we didn't talk about a second ago. Jordan Allen, Chidi Obiazer, those guys that hadn't had hardly any experience doing what they're doing right now were just chickens with their head cut off day one, that now are turning into consistent playmakers, guys that flash, not just do their job, but flash consistently throughout practice.
I was going to ask a little bit about that position too, based on what you said about the young guys. Pardon me. I'm curious as to what it means to have Stufflebean and Mott back to help those guys, and yet with their roles. I don't know if you were expecting both to come back, but that seems like an awfully big deal to me.
Yeah, in December, we really didn't know how all that was going to shake out, and we were preparing for whatever, and I knew that we could handle whatever. The program is strong enough to handle whatever, but to have those guys back, that's such a big deal. Again, to pile on the leadership that Coach Wyatt gives those guys. Coach Wyatt can scream until he's blue in the face, and often does. But to have Brendan Mott pull you aside and say something, I think is maybe more impactful. And so that those guys that have played significant snaps in this program, and meaningful snaps and championship snaps, when he tells me something, I'm all ears. And so that's been the world for not only those young guys, but another guy that I should mention, I'd be remiss if I didn't, is Travis Bates. Travis is another transfer like Jordan Riley that came in here and has been lights out. I mean, from the minute he stepped out there in winter conditioning, we knew that this was a Wildcat. The way he goes about his business, how he takes care of his body, how he plays, practice after practice. He's going to be a significant contributor for us also.
He was the guy I was going to ask about next, but since you touched on that, I'll go back to Cam. Do you see him being somebody that can play multiple positions, or is your preference now, because of his youth, to kind of keep him in one spot?
Cam Salas?
Yes.
Yeah, I think we're gonna keep him at linebacker right now. A, because of the depth of our safety room, and B, his body is so thick. I mean, he's going to be a much bigger guy than what he is right now. And he came in as a big-bodied safety, which was kind of what we were thinking. And he's one of the faster kids on our football team. So, he has the athletic ability to play safety, but I just think 6 months from now, he might be 222. And he's going to look a little different than the guys in the safety room. Yeah, his mentorship was huge. Not for a guy like Austin, who he spent that much time with, but for a guy like Austin Romaine, who was just stepping into playing a significant amount of snaps. A guy like Asa Newsom, a guy like Jake Clifton, those guys that were, I don't want to say they just didn't know. They weren't scared to go out there and perform. They had no idea what they were getting into, being the Mike Backer of this program week after week. And so just his calming presence, I think, was good, not just for those guys, but for everybody. And so be forever grateful to that guy for his contribution, even when he wasn't playing.
Is there a timetable for Asa Newsom before go?
Saw him out my window yesterday working with the trainers, doing his rehab stuff, and it appeared to me that he was running linear pretty close to full speed. So, there's still quite a bit of time between, that and being ready to go. But I think that's a really encouraging sign without any movement issues appeared to me. I think the next step in that is change direction and then you got to consistently do it. I think our hope for him is that he gets a full summer June and July, and has no impairments come August 1st.